Hi everyone, welcome to THT, and today I would like to show you some of the lists me and my friends have been working on, and some of the my early ideas for Shadow of the Galaxy. So this is not full in-depth deck tech videos. It is we're going to be talking generally about a few ideas, a few deck ideas that we've been playtesting. So I'm not going to go into as much details on each of those lists. I'm not going to do the card by card analysis. I will keep until we know a little bit more about those and until a lot more testing has been done before releasing the proper in-depth videos on each of the deck decks. So this is just going to be an overview about some of the lists I've been excited to play with, some of the lists that I think are going to be very powerful, and some ideas that I think are worth exploring on a competitive level. So it's a video I've been waiting for a very long time to make because I've kept myself from showing any list until we have the full card list, and now that we know every single card in the game, it is the right moment to show you some of the decks that I've been working on. So the first list I want to show you is obviously the elephant in the room. So first of all, before we get into it, I've worked on. I'm going to show you today. Obviously, I've worked on many other lists than those I'm going to show you in this video. But here I decided to focus on two leaders that are already very competitive right now. So how the improved version from Shadows of the Galaxy's version of those decks looks like. Two decks that are basically leaders from Spark of the Rebellion, so deck that existed in Spark of Rebellion, but have gotten a lot better with Shadows of the Galaxies, and then finally two lists with two new leaders. And obviously I will show many more in the future, but for this video we're going to focus on 6 different archetypes. So the first archetype I want to talk about is obviously the elephant in the room. It is Boba Fett yellow. Um, Boba Fett obviously still, I think, even after the expansion, is still going to be the strongest leader in the game. And I believe that the cunning version, the yellow version, is going to get stronger. Obviously, all different Boba lists are going to get better, but I think more so the Boba Yellow than the other version. The reason is because in Boba Yellow, one of the biggest weaknesses of Boba Yellow is that the yellow card pool was not really deep enough, and there are a lot of cards in the deck that were a little bit fillers. Shadow of the Galaxy more than enough provided enough cards for us to completely fill the deck with excellent cards, and this means that we get to keep the power level of the discounted cunning of the all the Cantina bouncers and the body rook and all those great cards, and we get to fill it up with even more powerful cards. So a lot of the weakness that Boba Yellow had in Spark of Rebellion are no longer true. At least they've been compensated by some sort of mechanics, which we'll go into detail. So this is the version I personally came up with. As you can see in the structure, it is very much like the old Boba Yellow from Spark of Rebellion. And as you can see, so we got a couple of new cards. So let's talk about first what were the weaknesses of Boba Yellow in Spark of Rebellion. So the weaknesses of Boba Yellow were weak 4-drops, weak matchup against control. So globally, not a great control matchup. I mean, it was not as bad as some others, but it was not great. And overall lack of high quality cards, and sometimes certain grinding matchup were a little bit difficult. So how do we fix all those issues? So first of all, the 4-drop issues, that the problem in the curve, we cannot really ramp from 3 to 5, and we have to play some 4-drops. We had to play cards like Game War on Guards or sometimes AT-RT, not really good. Now we got 4 LOMs, so the cards down here, which is a very solid 4-drop that comes to play, ambush, kill some things, and leave a valuable body on the board that can buff the 6/6 for 5, give him potentially step 7 ambush, extremely powerful follow-up. So you have this great line of play that now exists that did not exist before. 4 LOM, of course, a great 4-drop, even ignoring his synergy with the other guy. And another cool thing as well is that we get to compensate the matchup, the control matchup by a lot. We basically got loads of great cards for the control matchup. So I'm also showing you the sideboard with two cards which I think are really gonna help the deck in the control matchup. First of all, Bazine, which is an amazing discard outlet that can be played from your hand for a cheap cost. And obviously the opponent gets to draw an extra card, but what matters in this case is to get rid of the important key card like the Super Laser Blast, the Vigilance, all cards that will win the matchup. Maybe Vision is not a great example, but like specifically like the Super Laser Blast or even something that can answer a Boba Fett's Fire Spray. We know that you play a Fire Spray, if it doesn't get answered 1 or 2 turns, you get to win the game. With Bazine, you get to get rid of the answers. So things like this are basically hand discard, selective discard, extremely powerful against control. And now we got access to hand discards with Villainy Cunning for two resources, and not only that, we also get to smuggle it, which is extremely valuable, meaning that even if you had to resource Bazine early to put pressure on your opponent, that's okay, you can still play it later on to get rid of the important answers that your opponent might have. Another great tool to fight the control matchup, which was such a difficult matchup, is the TIE Phantom. So the Lurking TIE Phantoms down here is a great card against control, because it turns out if opponent plays Power of the Dark Side or any other sacrificing effect like Avenger, and we have TIE Phantom in play, we can say we can choose TIE Phantom, and because the Phantom is immune in defeating effect, basically nothing happens. So as long as you got TIE Phantoms in play, you basically ignore Power of the Dark Side and Avenger, which is a great asset. And not only that, the card is relatively difficult to get rid of. The opponent is going to have specifically going to need something along the lines of either another space unit to fight with it, or he's going to have to play something like a Make an Opening, and this card gets to basically deal 4 damage for 4 damage every turn in space, which is extremely valuable. So those are like really amazing anti-control assets that the deck has that the deck didn't have before. Other than this, the deck has also a lot of interesting pressure. So one of the other weaknesses that the Boba Yellow had was that he didn't have a lot of very good 2-drops, and now we got Dr. Evazan. So Evazan is a very interesting card, but I believe that in the context of an aggressive deck where you get to attack base most of the time, it's a very powerful turn 1 play. It's not really meant to be used to trade with other unit, but just being at a very resilient, because as soon as you take off the shield of Evazan, then he's very susceptible to be killed, and Evazan that get killed can really be a big swing in your opponent's favor. So basically the right strategy with Dr. Evazan is just to keep attacking the opponent base, try to keep the shield, and at least force the opponent, if your opponent is going to be wanting to kill it in order to untap resources, at least he's going to have to mobilize substantial amount of resources. And even if he does this, we have a couple of ways to around this. We have notably 2 copies of McClunky. As soon as Evazan loses shield, we can play McClunky, kill another unit, bring the Evazan back into our hand. Or we can play a new adventure to simply refresh the shield on Evazan. And even if that doesn't have, so basically the idea of is focus on attacking base, and if your opponent Evazan is trying to mobilize resources to kill it, then we need to find a way to refresh it, and that's usually the way it goes. And if you play that like that, it's an excellent turn 1, and this is mostly compensating one of the biggest weaknesses of the deck, which was a relatively underwhelming turn 1 play. So other things that obviously a new adventure basically is a great addition to the deck, as it's pretty much combined with everything in the deck. It refreshes shields on our shielded unit, which we have plenty of. It allows us to blink the Body Rook for extra discard, and this is another great asset versus control. But it's great to it allows us to blink the Bouncer in order to get another bounce effect. Obviously, the strongest combination with Fire Spray, we attack with Fire Spray, we play New Adventure, Fire Spray comes back ready to attack again. And all those things makes the deck incredibly more powerful. So the deck is just getting so much that it's really overwhelming. So we also have this guy here, forgot his name. It's a 5/5 for 6 Saboteur, just a very big threat, a very powerful proactive threat we can play during the Boba turn. And when he gets the +1/+1 from F4 LOM, that's even better. Then he gets to one-shot a leader. It's absolutely with ambush, it's absolutely absurd. Relentless Pursuit is another great asset for the deck. It makes the Boba turn even more terrifying, because usually you want to play this one Boba gets to deploy, we get to get rid of a unit, and not only we get rid of that unit, we also put a shield on Boba Fett for only 3 resources. Just a huge tempo swing, extremely powerful cards. And obviously we got the Boba Fett armor. So Boba Fett armor is a great card, not great against every deck. That's why we only play in one in the main deck, because it's really good against basically mid-rangey decks. Not so good against aggro, which usually you're going to be ignoring and not even going to try to kill Boba Fett. And against control, Boba Fett armor is usually not going to save you. Your opponent is going to be able to super laser blast it away just the exact same way. So it really doesn't make much of a difference against blue control. But against everything else, it's amazing. So we got one in the main deck, traditional sideboard, and this is another big thing that really compensated one of the big weaknesses of the deck was that it would suffer against very grindy deck like the Palpatine decks or the Vader red decks would have a pretty decent matchup against Boba. While with Fire Spray armor, those matchups are going to become so much easier. So it is pretty much everybody expects this deck to be the best deck in the next meta because it was already considered one of the best deck in Spark of Rebellion, and it's only gonna get it's getting so much more. So it is obviously very natural that everybody expects this deck to become the next big thing. But obviously, things don't always go the way. Maybe this new version is gonna have weaknesses that we're able to get to exploit, and other deck, of course, are also gonna get stronger. So we'll see how it turns out. But this is an extremely scary deck, and obviously this has to be the first deck I show you because it's basically the deck that everybody thinks about. And I just wanted to show you what is my personal take on this deck. Obviously, I'm known to be a big Han Solo green player. I've very early on in Spark of Rebellion, I've worked even before the release of the game. I worked very hard on perfecting this deck, which has been my favorite deck. And this is the version I came up with for Shadow of the Galaxy. So basically, one of the biggest upgrade for this deck is more ramp. You know that Han Solo green as a deck becomes so much stronger whenever you manage to draw a resupply, when now we have access to Spark of Hope. I only came with only 2 copies of it because I think it is significantly more situational than resupply because of you need to have a unit on the battlefield turn 1 that gets to be killed to be able to play it. But nevertheless, it's an amazing and I didn't want it to have too much ramp because really the ramp on turn 2 is what matters the most. Maybe the right call would be to have a full playset of each card. I'll see how it goes with further testing, but so far this is what I landed on. And this is going to improve the consistency of the deck a lot. Other than this, we got the Marauder, which I think is an excellent anti-space unit. Now we're going to be able to curve into the Bright Hope and then the Marauder on the turn after as a great to balance things out between this ground and space. The Falcon really dominates the early stage of the game, and the Marauder comes a little bit later, and his ability is also extremely valuable in an Han Solo red. So in Han Solo ramp. So as you can see, because we play more ramp, we can afford to have a bit of a bigger curve, and that's why I'm playing the 3 Reinforcement Walker in the main deck. Unfortunately, Shadow of the Galaxy did not really give us a much better late game card in those colors to play with Han, so that's a bit unfortunate. That's why we have to stick to the Reinforcement Walkers on ones and Han Solos and U-Wing Reinforcement, but those are obviously very powerful cards, so not really much to say. A couple of small improvements here and there. For example, Maz is significantly better than Vanguard, so played Maz over Vanguard. And then we got Spare the Targets over the traditional Waylay, because we see plenty of bounty units being played. And also 2 copies of Kira, which is going to be a strict improvement over the out of aspect Regional Governor, which I found to be a pretty good card. I didn't make the cut. It never made the cut in my version of the deck, but now that Kira is just so much better, you get a bigger body, you have a 3/5 body, and get to see the opponent in hand before you get to name the card. And yes, it does not prevent the card to be removed, played completely, but the extra 3 resources you have to pay is more than enough to prevent the card from being played at a reasonable timing. So as you can see, this is very much just the same idea, the same deck, but just upgraded. And maybe that's not going to be the right way to play Han Solo moving forward. talking about the audacious smuggler, of course. Maybe there's going to be better ways to run him, but that's the version I've been landing on for now. As you can see in the sideboard, very much more of the same. Also get the 3/5 restore 2. I think very good against aggro. So the Liberators are still making the cut after for aggro because we need more early anti-space. And the Kira gets control, the Bodywork gets control, more ramp in certain matchup, and that's pretty much the deck. Moving on now to basically decks that existed in Spark of Rebellion, but unfortunately did not really were pretty much just kind of more niche decks. They are either like tier 2.5 or tier 3 decks. And the first one I want to talk about is Mono Rebel Sabine, so Mono Red Sabine. Mono Red Sabine, in my opinion, Mono Red got a lot of stuff in this expansion, and and I think Mono Red was already a pretty decent deck in Spark of Rebellion, but it really got a lot stronger with this expansion. Not only the density of powerful wet cards has increased because there's just more cards, but also there's now others very good options for double red. So we got, for example, of course, the 3/3 for 2. That is just very good. They give us some very solid turn 1 play. Basically a better version of Battlefield Marine. You can't really hope for much better than that. It is not a rebel and it is not heroism. So maybe it's not better than Battlefield Marine, but it is just very solid. We also have Ketsu Onyo, which I think is going to be very good in the Shadow of the Galaxy meta because there's loads of upgrades. So being able to defeat those upgrades is going to be very good. Overall, also aggression I think is also getting better because, as I said, there's going to be more upgrades. So aggression is going to be a stronger card overall. The Chaos of War is basically extra copies of 4 cards, I believe in. Maybe not as consistent. Sometimes it deals more, sometimes it deals less, but nevertheless a very powerful card. We managed to play 4 cards, I believe in, with reasonable odds. I think we're only running like yeah, only 9 non-heroism card in the entire deck, which is reasonable. It's not ideal, but it's reasonable. Cassian Handor is also a huge upgrade, very strong card. 3/5 for 3, and the smuggle is just nasty. We're also sneaking a Dark Blade in there. Dark Blade basically gets to be played without access penalty if you played on Sabine. We do have a few other Mandalorians in case Sabine has been defeated, but obviously we only play it as a one-off because it remains relatively situational. But if you get in the right moments, it's a nasty swing, and your opponent does not have an answer for it, he will lose the game very quickly, so that's going to be very powerful. Also, Heroic Resolve has been also sneaked in the deck. I think this card is very versatile, can be played on either ground or space units, and the ability that it provides is very good. +1/+1 for 1 that can be placed on anything is just very solid. The rest of the deck is what you would expect from a red-white aggro deck. So we're trying to keep a high amount of rebel cards in a deck, even though there's a few non-rebels. The amount of rebels is still pretty decent. That's why we're still keep the Donnas, the Fleet Lieutenants, the Wing Leaders. In the sideboard, we got anti-upgrades, anti-heal, some ping damage. So the shark card I think is very strong, but I wanted to keep it for this specific version of the game. I wanted to keep 4 cards I believe in, so try to keep the amount of heroism card high. That's why I didn't put it in the main deck. And yeah, that's pretty much the deck. Definitely an aggro deck that you can watch out for. I mean, obviously Yellow Sabine and Green Sabine also got a lot of upgrade. I still believe that Sabine decks are going to be the strongest. The Sabine decks are going to be the strongest aggro decks in the meta. I think. I mean, there are other aggro decks that might emerge, but I still believe that Sabine is going to be the go-to option as far as aggressive deck is concerned. So, pretty exciting stuff for people who've been loving this deck, and this is only going to get stronger with this. Another deck that has not really made its way into the meta, like was really much a niche deck, but I think is getting so much stronger with the new expansion, is obviously Thrawn Blue. I think Thrawn is secretly getting so much stronger. Basically, there's a lot of reasons now to be playing yellow as a control color and we're going to see why in a minute. So basically this version is relatively close to the Thrawn Blue that you might have seen, especially from one of my deck tech videos, when I talked about Thrawn Blue. And as you can see, it's getting a lot. So first of all, one of the big problem with Thrawn Blue was it's a deck that was doing a lot of card disadvantage. You were playing a lot of cards like No Good to Me Dead, Whaley, that kind of things. And you basically was kind of running out of cards, and that means that often you were not playing those cards at all. And in this case, you were not really getting a lot in the yellow colors. Now you're getting so much more with yellow. Let's talk about a few cards that we're getting. For first of all, Cloud Rider is an excellent early game interaction to get rid of enemies on the ground. Basin is going to be an amazing card in a Mirror of Control, but also anything that has that has basically hand disruption is going to be super valuable in control for cards that are difficult to deal with, like all the redemptions. Another redemption, the Relentless, the kind of card that are very difficult to deal with once they are on the ground. Being able to basically discard them away with Bazine is going to be super valuable. And this is really the hand disruption that the deck was needing. A lot of people play Spark of Rebellion. Spark of Rebellion at 4 or at 6, very expensive. This is much cheaper. It also smuggles, which is amazing. Just a great card. Then we got, of course, Dr. Pershing as a card advantage tool, basically a way to get ourselves some card advantage for relatively cheap cost. Is really amazing. Another great card advantage tool is enticing reward. So card that is not part of the database yet, so I had to kind of paste it on the list. So for people who don't know what this card does, it's basically a bounty that costs 1, and once you collect the bounty, you get to search for 2 non-unit cards in your deck, in the top 10 card of your deck, and put it in your hand. And if that unit was non-unique, you get to discard a card after. Not one of the cards, just any card from your hand. So even if you play this on a non-unique, it is pretty good. But obviously the idea is to play it on unique to try to make card advantage. It's an excellent card draw. So one resource is very easy to collect the bounty because we play a removal, a control deck with so many removals. And it's going to give us card advantage and also quality cards. Going to find the card that we need. Higher chances to find the Super Laser Blast, the Vigilances, whatever we need to solve a given situation. So many other great great additions to this deck. Obviously, the Client, which is going to be a great healing outlet, basically giving bounty to enemy units and then kill them to defeat them to restore our HP by a lot. We're still playing a significant amount of blue units, so Charleston is still very much worth it in my opinion. Maybe it's not. Maybe after further techniques it won't be, but I think that even though we do play a higher density of yellow cards than before, the deck has more ways to draw cards like Dr. Pershing's and Enticing Reward, mixed that with the keeping our hand pretty full, which means that even if you have a couple of cards that is not blue in your hand, Charleston is still very likely to be a successful fall. Another amazing upgrade is going to be Evacuate. It's basically another extra copies of Super Laser Blast that obviously doesn't defeat units forever, but the fact that it costs 6 and allows us to get out of very dicey situation, I think is going to be incredible. Frozen in Carbonites is basically stronger than No Good to Me Dead in this specific deck because it basically just keeps the unit tapped forever. People will be playing anti-upgrades in this expansion, so just keep that in mind, but even then I still think the card is incredible. Obviously Bounty Hunter Crew to get back our important events, and also going to give us a pretty good mirror match with Vigilance, getting back Bounty Hunter Crew, and the restock is going to be great. And also more diversity in removal with Fall the Dragon and Rival's Fall. I think Rival's Fall is a big upgrade for the deck because being able to kill those super large leaders without having to spend a Super Laser Blast is going to be super valuable for the deck as well. So there's a lot going on. Obviously in the sideboard we have a couple of other things. The target is going to be a great healing card. I think the Snoke Supreme Leader is going to be a good card against certain decks, especially decks that rely heavily on units. So yeah, I feel as this deck looks pretty incredible on paper. Maybe Thrawn is not the right call for this deck. Maybe an Iden is going to be better. I think in the context of a yellow control deck, I prefer Thrawn a little bit more because you get to be able to see what your opponent is going to draw is pretty valuable. and also the built-in exhaust effect is going to be pretty valuable. Is I think pretty good as well. So I always like prefer for Thrawn in a yellow control decks, but maybe Iden is going to be a right call. We'll see with further testing. But this deck looks extremely scary. So I also wanted to show you like a different take on the deck. This is the same deck, but this is this time a unit-less version of the deck. So as you can see, it does not run any units outside of Bazine and the Cloud Rider, and then the Bounty Hunter crew, which are pretty much just um, event units. They're not really like so much. They're not units in which it's worth it to spend a removal on. So it's very a version that is basically completely ignores completely the opponent removal by playing basically no units, at least in the main deck. And that is also something that I think is quite scary. I don't know which one is going to be better. This is why I'm showing you both of them. It has the search your feelings in the main deck, the targets to replace the client as well to win health. So it's a bit more events, as you can see. But yeah, this deck is extremely scary. I think the biggest upgrade for this deck is enticing reward, in my opinion. But honestly, there's so much stuff going on. It's gonna be pretty scary. Obviously, it is still very early on, so it's a little bit difficult to design a control deck in an environment where you don't know what the meta is going to be, because we're talking about a very reactive deck. And it's hard to build a deck when you don't know really what you're reacting against, because you don't know what the meta is going to be. But nevertheless, I still believe this deck is going to be incredible. It might not be the case right away, but at some point it's going to be, I'm pretty sure. So now let's talk about new leaders, and obviously, in my opinion, the best leader in the expansion is the new Han Solo, the red Han Solo. So this is not my deck. This is a deck designed by Voltor, one of my friends, and he decided to design this super cool Han Solo aggro deck that is trying to basically swarm the board with a bunch of units and with a lot of ways to draw cards. And I think this deck is extremely good. Basically, it's running the 3-3PO R2D2 synergies, and what is very cool is like you can play 3-3PO R2D2 turn 1, then use Han Solo ability, play 3-3PO alongside R2D2, draw a card right away, and then you already have the draw engine on the board right away, which is super cool. And basically, it's a deck that really swarms the board. It's basically it is a type of deck that we haven't really seen in Star Wars Unlimited, where we have seen aggro decks, of course, but we didn't see really aggro decks that were really trying to swarm the board. Kind of a zoo deck, as you can see, where it's really swarming the board with a bunch of units and really trying to overwhelm the opponent. So it empties its hands very quick. That's why it needs card draw like R2D2, 3-3PO, Mon Mothma, and it puts tons of pressure on the opponent. If it's not playing cheap card, it's discounting them using Han Solo's ability. And obviously, it's running the Poe Dameron and Wrecker combo with Energy Conversion Lab. This is the combo that I've tested very early on with Cassian. Notably, I was playing a lot of Cassian early on before Han Solo was spoiled. Now I just believe that Han is kind of a better version of Cassian, even though they're a bit different. But yeah, Poe Dameron is incredible in the deck because once he has Ambush, he comes into play, can kill something that has up to 8 health, provide insane value with his discard thing. The deck has a lot of ways to draw cards, so we can afford to discard a few cards with Poe. Is really, really a strong card. The ability to destroy upgrades is also very valuable in this set. Wrecker is another amazing card, combined with Energy Conversion Lab. Comes into play, defeat a resource, kills something that costs 5, and then ambush something else. Even without ambush, it's also a very good card. Timely intervention is going to be also very good with Poe Dameron and Wrecker. And obviously, K2SO is still very good with ECL. So, just a very, very powerful deck. Very focused on aggro. The Maz, as you can see, is being played even without U-Wing reinforcement, just as something that just get buffed very, very quickly because we play so many units. So, yeah, it's a very, very cool deck and very powerful and very different from anything that we've seen before. I also wanted to show you a different version of a different take on this deck. So this one is made by Jonas Nicholas, which is another my friend. And this time he's running a more mid-rangey version of the deck. So he's playing some ramp with Spark of Hope. As you can see, some of the decks are a bit similar, but then, yeah, as I said, he's playing some ramp. He's not playing R2D2 alongside C3PO because he's really playing a lot of 3-drops. And basically the idea is to play this PO and always say 3 to try to draw a card almost all the time. We also see the Guerrilla Attack Pod, which is a great card with Han Solo. U-Wing Reinforcement, which is obviously great to populate the board. The home one at the top curve. It's a bit more mid-rangey, a very powerful deck as well that I think is quite scary. And it can shift a little bit more aggro with Rebel Assaults in the sideboard. And so last but not least, there is my own version of Jabba the Hutt's a Jabba the Hutt ramp deck. So this is basically I was thinking about what is the best version to run Jabba the Hutt. So basically, the idea was to build on a bounty deck where I wouldn't run any bounties, and the idea is to try to have cards that requires a bounty payoff to actually be good, but those cards will always be turned on because Jabba the Hutt always provide that bounty. So what do we have here? So we have the Reputable Hunter, which is basically a 3/4 for 2. As long as there's at least one unit on the other side, we're just going to give it bounty with Jabba, plays as a 3/4 for 2. So we're really using Jabba's ability both as an enabler for our bounty cards, but also as a way to ramp ourselves, because we are playing kind of a rampy deck. So Jango Fett, of course, with the ability to get +3/+0 and overwhelm when he attacks, just a very solid unit in general, but becomes even better when units have bounty. And we have Christian, which also is going to be a 3/7 that comes to play ready, just very strong. Other than this, it's pretty much like the good stuff, red, green, black, as you would expect. We got the ramp, Super Laser Technician, and Resupply. Kylo TIE Silencer as early interaction in space. The Black Sun Starfighter might be a surprise to a lot of you, but it's a card I think is going to be very good against aggro, and it's a great card to pull out of Darth Vader. Is it the right call? Maybe it's better to play the 3/4 instead. But I found these Sentinels to be quite valuable, and the 3/4 doesn't really work so well in this deck, so it's called the Pursuer, I believe. Because our unit, we give bounties to stuff, but we don't. This unit actually readies whenever a unit that is upgraded leaves the battlefield, is defeated. There's no such thing in our deck. We don't play any bounty upgrades. It's really much just focus on trying to benefit from bounty without having to play the bounty cards. Because what can be awkward sometimes in the bounty deck is that you draw the bounties and you don't draw the bounty payoff, or you draw the bounty payoff but you don't draw the bounty cards. So this deck has the advantage of consistency where you always have the bounty coming in. So it's a little bit of a different take on the bounty compared to a traditional Bosk deck that I will definitely talk about later on in a different video. But this one is really aimed at we're just a ramp deck that has some bounty synergies with Jabba the Hutt, and that's about it. So in the ramp, we'll also play the this little guy here, I forgot his name. This guy is really cool with Yularen. Comes to play, pings something, comes back into your hand. You play, you get to heal again. It's a nice little engine against aggro that's very cheap to run. So I wanted to try this in this deck. I think it's pretty good. Maybe it's not the best deck for it, but I think it's a pretty solid. We play, of course, the Phase 3 Dark Troopers to get some Sentinels. And then we play, of course, all the late game stuff. The Ruthless Raider that we can ambush with timely intervention and one-shot a fire spray. We have the obviously Vader, which is very good in this deck. We got the Emperor's Palpatine. And we got Jabba's Rancor, which is just a 9/9 for 7 that deals damage, is really strong. And obviously, probably the best, one of the best late game card we've seen in this matchup, the Dragon 10/10 Overwhelm with an insanely powerful ability. All this is just very good. So that's basically what we run. And obviously the barrage is still there, the open fire, all the classic stuff that we know and love. All this is still very much in there. And yeah, that's basically so that's it for this video. I've shown you like 6 different decks, so with different variants sometimes. And I think, as I said, I do not necessarily those decks have been tested, so I've played those decks multiple times. I know that they're decent decks, but obviously time will tell if those decks will end up being part of the meta. I'm expect that some of them will be. I'll be very surprised, for example, if Boba Yellow is not gonna be part of the meta, because his deck looks incredible and it plays incredible. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that video, and I'll see you next time for more decks that I will show off, and I will also as soon as I a little bit more experience with one particular deck, I will go into my super detailed video about deck techs when I'm gonna go in details on one specific archetype. With all that being said, thank you so much for following me and supporting me. Leave a like if you like that kind of video, and take a look at my coaching schedule if you're interested in doing some coaching for Star Wars Unlimited. I'll put everything in the description. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.